Joining us now is Pete Paschal. He's the editorial director at reviews.com. Pete, it's good to have you with us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Okay, so explain this. How would a ByteDance phone fit into the smartphone market?
You know, that's what I've kind of been trying to wrap my head around. When I first heard this story, I immediately thought of, this is an old story. Like, we've seen this before with Facebook and Amazon both sort of being intoxicated by the idea of a piece of hardware. You know, they have very strong experiences, but then they're like, oh, why don't we also do a phone? And then we remember this is from a few years ago, the Facebook phone and the Amazon phone.
Oh, obviously the most widely used phones out there right now, right?
Exactly, they've completely taken over the market. So I kind of don't get it, you know, it's like, I get that TikTok is super popular, I get that they are a powerhouse in China, but to me, they need to answer that question. What is your differentiator? Why would I buy that phone as opposed to buying someone else's phone and just downloading your apps? That really has to be answered.
Does the trade war have anything to do with this? Companies trying to focus more on their home base and supply directly to that homegrown constituency?
Well, honestly, I think that's the only way this works, is that this is a phone they're going to mainly market in China and probably India because they have such a fan base there. Even with that, though, I feel like there is a problem, because if you go to look at China, I mean, you're looking at Huawei, Vivo, Xiaomi, ZTE, all these big brands that they're going to be going toe-to-toe with in their homeland. So I don't think there's any kind of guarantee at all, even if they decide, okay, this is just a phone for Asian markets. They still need to answer that. Why would I buy your phone instead of just a Huawei phone and download your apps?
Okay, so you've made the case about why they shouldn't do this, which I completely agree with, as someone who covered the Fire phone launch and saw the way the Facebook phone failed too.
And that, at least the Fire phone had some differentiating features. They tried to answer that question. They had the dynamic perspective scanners,
yeah,
the
it had
Firefly
some cool tech
stuff.
built into it. It's just
kind of
nobody could
interesting.
download any apps for it.
Yeah,
apps
yeah.
were created for it, in addition to many other issues, I think. So what's the reason they should do this? I mean, why would this succeed? Why could it succeed? In your wildest dreams, if you were making decisions at TikTok right now, what would you be telling people about?
Well, it is apparently based on the CEO's dream of, like, we're going to own a certain amount of mobile market share, and everyone's going to own our phone and be experiencing our experiences on our hardware. The end-to-end experience, which Apple obviously is the ultimate template for, is what everyone's going for. So the thing is, there are ways to carve out your space in the mobile market, even today. I mean, OnePlus has done this actually, I think, really, really well over the last few years by simply marketing a value prospect. You can get flagship performance on their phones for roughly, pretty much half the price now of these more expensive phones. So going for some very straightforward either value or some other sell for the customer, it makes sense, but it's got to be more than just here's our apps preloaded.
But I think to compete in this modern day, the price point would have to be so low. I mean, you look at Huawei, for instance, right, which in some ways it didn't emerge out of nowhere, but it certainly was going up some very deep-pocketed competitors, but successfully has staged, quite the run because of its cheaper phones.
Well, we'll see how that goes now that they're facing the extreme headwinds of all this sort of global suspicion about their moves into 5G. But you're absolutely right that they carved out a name for themselves slowly but surely on the entire world market by having good, cheap phones for everyone. Can a TikTok phone really do that? I'm very skeptical, but there was actually some other news today that sort of emphasized sort of the point I'm making about the experience. So it's like Apple just announced, like an hour ago or something, their new iPod Touch, and really, like, this is essentially a phone without the phone part, right? But people are still going to buy it because they trust that experience. Mm-hmm. Apple has built up that trust over a decade of, like, oh, it's the Apple experience. I have all this stuff. I'll even buy a phone without the phone. Like it's sort of the other side of this wall that TikTok wants to climb.
Pete, we only have a couple minutes left, so I wanted to make sure to hit on some other big news. Over the weekend, Facebook refusing to remove that altered video of Nancy Pelosi, instead giving users additional reporting when they try to share it. Why is Facebook refusing to remove this?
Well, this is the sort of weird limbo Facebook has forced itself into of, like, they refuse to say they're a publisher, which would make them immediately responsible for all of the content on their network. So they don't want to do that, but yet they also say they are responsible to some extent And we've seen this repeatedly over the last year, and most recently when they've banned certain provocateurs like Alex Jones and InfoWars and that. So it's really like, which is it? Like they know they can't just be the pipes. That's not like the telephone lines where it's like, hey, I don't know what's going on this network. But they also want to, they say they want to have as many wide points of view as possible, that like cut out like the worst stuff and then just kind of leave it on. So I think they're going to continually get hammered for this kind of stuff of leaving stuff up until they come out and just basically say they're a publisher, because right now it seems very arbitrary and ad hoc.
A lot of people, I think, still questioning when is the tipping point, right? When the user experience changes and users start to sour on the platform because of some of the things that we've seen Facebook keep up.
Well, I would
even though the stock's still up 33% this year.
Well, the thing is, I think like they still get a lot of engagement on their platform, and I think this is mostly because I think it's not so much people are tuning out, it's that people have redefined their relationship with Facebook and are now looking at the content much more skeptically. They're kind of not going to it for what they were going to it even a couple of years ago, and that's partly because Facebook has started shifting away from content. Their publisher stuff isn't really as prominent in news feeds. And I think it's partly because of like all of the hot water they've found themselves in. People are just like, well, why would I even sort of believe what I see on Facebook anymore? I'm just going there for the photos of my grandchildren.
All right, well, that's a little concerning, but a good point nonetheless. Pete Paschal, editorial director at reviews.com. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.